Ms. Graves.
Good morning, Chairman Connolly, Ranking Member Heiss, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Lisa Graves, and I'm the Executive Director of the watchdog group True North Research. I help lead collaborations like Coke Docs, Bold Rethink, and the Ben Franklin Project. I previously served as Deputy Assistant Attorney General and Chief Counsel for Nominations for the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, where I vetted judicial nominees. Thorough vetting is essential to protecting the integrity of our democratic institutions. It helps to ensure appointees to positions of public trust are highly qualified and do not have conflicts or agendas that would put their personal interest ahead of the public interest. Unfortunately, based on new information about Mr. DeJoy's background and actions, it's clear that the new, inexperienced, partisan-led, and short-handed Board of Governors appointed by Donald Trump failed to properly vet him to protect the interests of the American people, and it continues to fail to do so. I am calling on Mr. DeJoy to be fired or to resign. First, as Ms. Ravel testified, Mr. DeJoy is facing new credible allegations of violating anti-corruption laws through using straw donors. Congressman Cooper asked Mr. DeJoy if he had ever reimbursed employees for political donations, and he denied it. Based on this newly reported information, however, I respectfully ask the committee to make a formal referral to the U.S. Attorney's Office to investigate whether Louis DeJoy's testimony violated 18 U.S.C. 1001 of the Criminal Code. Second, Mr. DeJoy has been accused of violating the law before by his own brother. Dominic DeJoy Jr. swore in a complaint that he was cheated out of the family business by Mr. DeJoy, who secretly created LLCs, private LLCs that were portrayed to him as jointly owned subsidiaries. Mr. DeJoy admitted that they were separate, though similarly named firms, but denied that he did anything wrong. His brother also alleged in the suit, which he denied and was settled through a secrecy agreement, that Louis DeJoy forged his signature and hid monthly mailed bank statements from two banks and an investment firm for accounts that were secretly opened in Dominic's name. No Postmaster General in history has ever been subject to such charges before in a civil court or criminal court. If Mr. DeJoy cannot be trusted by his own flesh and blood with not hiding his mail and millions of dollars, how can Americans trust him with millions of our votes? How could the new Postal Board of Governors approve a person with this troubling history to be Postmaster General? Well, the third point is the answer appears to be that Louis DeJoy's enormous political contributions made the difference. President Trump appointed Mike Duncan to the Board of Governors, and he has helped raise tens of millions of dollars to help keep Senator Mitch McConnell in power and aid GOP elections through donor databases and more. Mr. Duncan admitted to this committee that DeJoy was not originally on the list of prospective candidates for the job. However, following $600,000 in contributions to the RNC and President Trump's reelection strategy, Mr. DeJoy suddenly jumped to the top of the list. It is simply wrong to put such a partisan political insider in charge of the Postal Service, especially in an election year. Mr. DeJoy's close ties to Trump, who has attacked vote by mail, are disqualifying and raise a legitimate question we've never had to ask before. Will Mr. DeJoy use his power as the Postmaster General to deliver our ballots on time, or to deliver the election to the man he has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on and raised millions to help win, Donald Trump? Fourth, Mr. DeJoy's financial conflicts are also enormous and unprecedented. Mr. DeJoy has tens of millions of dollars in stock in XPO Logistics, a contractor and competitor of the Postal Service, and he receives millions annually from it through leases and stock transactions. No known Postmaster General in history has ever had such financial conflicts like Mr. DeJoy. Fifth, his destructive actions. Mr. DeJoy's actions since he took the job in June warrant his dismissal. If he had been a probationary employee, he would have been fired at least a month ago. In the midst of an unprecedented pandemic and a presidential election year dependent on reliable mail, Mr. DeJoy suddenly fired or demoted nearly 24 Postal Service experts, and on his watch, the Postal Service restricted the availability over time, and hundreds of mail sorting machines were removed, far more than the usual amount in the past 5 years. And he dictated a disruptive change in nationwide processes by ordering that trucks depart even if the daily mail sorting was not complete. He even micromanaged where mail trucks could park. These dictates led to chaos and real consequences and hardships, such as for senior citizens and veterans whose life-saving prescriptions are being delivered late. Our Postal Service deserves a person of the highest integrity, not a leader of the highest partisanship and arrogance like Mr. DeJoy. Sixth, unfortunately, his actions have destabilized the Postal Service and may be paving the way to privatizing it. As I documented, billionaire Charles Koch has staked efforts to privatize the Postal Service since the early 1970s. His political operation has been running digital ads to pressure U.S. senators not to give the Postal Service the COVID relief funds that it has previously requested. A longtime Coke ally worked with Senator Collins in 2006 to weigh the Postal Service down with an unprecedented debt burden for future health care benefits, an extraordinary liability no other agency or company has. But Mr. DeJoy is playing partisan politics of the Postal Service by refusing to seek the COVID relief funding it needs. Instead, it's slash and burn. So in conclusion, I urge Congress to protect the Postal Service's mission and the American people and the integrity of our elections by calling for Postmaster General Louis DeJoy to be fired, by fully investigating his activities, and by restoring Congress's constitutional role in approving the Postmaster, restructuring the board, and repealing the 2006 unprecedented debt anchor and other restrictions from that law.
Thank you.
The Postal Service belongs to us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.